Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Phil Longett-Higgins has asked me to give a special thank you to people that have joined from the Cyber Kingdom CISO community. So welcome to the call. It's great to have you on. Today we will be covering how to kickstart your SOC as a service efforts using Azure Sentinel. But first, let's just do some introductions. So my name's Amy Stokes-Waters. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. It's a good start, wasn't it? My name's Amy Stokes-Waters. I am a identity and security specialist. I don't know why this slide keeps doing that. My apologies. I'm an identity and security specialist at Identity Experts. I honestly don't know why that slide keeps doing that. We'll leave it there. I'm an identity and security expert at Identity Experts. I do have a very noisy 2-year-old, so if you do hear her in the background, I apologise, and I'm sure you'll hear my dad running rapidly after her, trying to capture her back again. Today I am joined on the call by Adrian Taylor from ITC Secure. Would you like to introduce yourself, Adrian?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I'm Ade Taylor. I'm the CTO at ITC Secure. So we are a pure play cyber services company, and I look after technology strategy, services development, pre-sales, all things technical. I don't have a 2-year-old, but I have 2 giant dogs who occasionally butt into conversations. So apologies if that happens. I think probably, Amy, that first slide doesn't want to display because it's got my picture on it. It's because it worked when it didn't. So
I think I've been playing around with that timings thing on PowerPoint, and clearly got my timings all wrong. But yeah, okay, so let's get started. So let's just talk a bit of background onto what into what a SIEM solution is and why we'd need one. So hopefully everyone knows what SIEM stands for. Until about 12 months ago, I didn't, so I will kindly let you in on the acronym. So SIEM stands for Security, Incident and Events Management. So why would we need a SIEM solution? Well, our digital estate is expanding pretty rapidly, which makes it increasingly difficult to protect. Currently, with the coronavirus pandemic going on, we've got a lot of home workers, meaning we've got a lot of employees potentially accessing our environment from their own devices, which can cause a big challenge. We still have on-premise solutions we need to access, so we obviously need to be monitoring those while we're not in the office. We also have things like partners we're working with, MSPs, other businesses we might liaise with on a regular basis. They may have access to our environment as well. And then outside of the mobile device arena, there's a whole host of other devices that we were responsible for as well. So printers, VoIP telephony solutions, IoT devices we might have enabled. And all of these different areas can pose a threat to the security of our environment. And as we progress our digital transformation projects and we kind of move increasingly to the cloud, our perimeter expands beyond the boundary of that physical network. So we're no longer, in the 4 walls of our office, and I think we're all feeling that more now than we ever have done before. We're all in our home offices or your dining room table, as I am. With coronavirus forcing us all to work or study remotely, our data, our users and our systems can no longer sit within the 4 walls of the office. They're not protected by the enterprise network. So we've got to make things accessible from any location. But doing this, we then know that opens us up to potential cyber attacks, the frequency and the sophistication of which is growing exponentially. There's been a sharp rise in DDoS attacks on ADFS infrastructure we know about. There's lots more phishing campaigns going on. Ade, I'm sure you've seen quite a few of these new attacks coming out through the SOC that you guys are running.
Absolutely, yeah. It's whenever there's a major event, somebody tries to take advantage, and I think there's 2 things they're trying to take advantage of at the moment. One is people are working in less secure environments, and 2 is the straightforward. People are gobbling up news about COVID-19, and anything that looks even remotely official, they're more likely to click on. So I'm sure you've all seen it, but it's been a massive spike in people trying to capitalize on it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's I think all of these things that I've mentioned there are a challenge that a lot of us are struggling with in IT security. I mean, when usually people that are working in IT security now, they're not, they didn't necessarily train in the same technologies that they're currently working with. So if you're doing an information technology degree, I know 15 years ago, you probably weren't working that heavily with things like IoT. I'm too young to know when it actually came out, obviously. So I'm not sure, and I've not got an IT degree either. But I'm sure that there's quite a big discrepancy between what people were trained in and what the IT looked like 15 years ago than what it looks like now. So I think it is a struggle that we're all facing. So how can we kind of help with that? So I mean, as an IT, as a security operations team, your mission is really to protect your information and your assets. And like I said, we know that mission's becoming increasingly difficult. We've got attack techniques, frequency, complexity, all evolving really quickly with more attack vectors that we've got. So all those different things that we talked about before, you know, the IoT devices, mobiles, laptops, whatever. With all those different attack vectors, that brings more defensive technologies. So we potentially have multiple vendors and then multiple products to configure. We've got to maintain those products, upgrade them, and obviously the best bit for everyone is the multiple salespeople. We know how much IT people love dealing with those. Another challenge that we face as well is that there's a shortage of cybersecurity personnel. We know that teams are often understaffed. They've got quite a big workload. They're protecting a lot of information, so it's identities, data, devices, applications. It's a hybrid estate. We're not just looking in one area. And then adding to that, obviously, with the multiple security technologies that we might be using, there's a lot of portals that we might need to look at. So you might have one for your MDM, one for your email threats, your firewalls, and that itself can be a headache. And again, because we've got multiple products and they're not necessarily correlating data, or they're not integrated together, we can see quite a high false positive rate in those individual solutions because they're working in isolation. So I mean, using an integrated product set, I don't know how many people are on M365 at the moment, but using an integrated product set like that can help to reduce the noise, kind of enable prioritization of incidents and alerts, and really facilitate that investigation using some automated technologies, but also, you know, with manual intervention, because you're able to see the high priority stuff that you really need to get on board with. So this is where we think Azure Sentinel can help. So Microsoft's made it really easy to collate data from across that hybrid estate. So, and we know that we don't have everything in the cloud. I know a lot more has been going into the cloud recently, but we know that it's unlikely you're going to have 100% of your workloads up there. So you do need to bring data in from on-premise services as well. And you want to ingest alerts from devices, users, applications, servers, and any cloud service. I mean, we know I'm sure you can tell, a Microsoft fangirl. I talk about Microsoft all the time, but I do know that other organizations don't have just a Microsoft estate, and they will want to ingest data from other places like AWS. So the Sentinel can ingest data from obviously non-Microsoft sources. It is a cloud native SIEM, so there's no upfront costs for setting it up for infrastructure in terms of infrastructure. There's no issues around the infrastructure maintenance either, so power and cooling, scaling it, or scaling it up. You don't have to go out and buy a load of new servers. Obviously, it just sits in Azure. It's native to that, so it's easy to kind of use that burst storage capacity to scale up and down as your requirements change. And the ability to scale on demand means that you can start out quite small, and then you can add additional integrations as you're ready to do so. Age, what kind of do you find that customers tend to start out with using maybe just the M365 technologies to start with, and then start adding additional workloads in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's really easy to turn on a relatively small part of the estate to demonstrate value, and to make sure you're actually getting something that you can work with and something meaningful for you, and then to go and enable other feeds from other sources. And yeah, we see that. We see that all the time, and in fact we encourage it, because it means that none of us have neither us or the customer have a massive upfront project to get it into a state where we can demonstrate value. We can do it all very quickly, mostly remotely, in fact entirely remotely, and demonstrate what kind of thing is what it's going to look like before we then make the commitment, or the customer makes the commitment to go and put everything else through it. Yeah,
definitely. And I think with the Office 365 data being able to be brought in for free, I mean, that does exclude Azure AD audit logs, but everything else from Office 365 you can bring into Sentinel for free, so you're not using a load of money to kind of test it out and play around with it. You can get started with a solution for free, and you can start seeing some really interesting data from the existing security tools that you've got enabled. So just want to show you a few screenshots of the solution before I hand over to Ed to kind of chat about how how ITC Secure are bringing a real value add service wrap around this solution as well. So there's built-in dashboard. So here's a dashboard from a connector. So once you've started to ingest some data, the dashboards really do start to become meaningful. From the main Sentinel dashboard, you get a bird's eye perspective of the events that are going on in the environment. So in this one, we have got a few events that have started to trickle in. This screenshot is from a demo that we did a couple of weeks ago, where one of my colleagues actually set up a Sentinel instance live on the demo. I think it took around 7 minutes end to end to get it started. So she had to set up the Sentinel environment and then start ingesting some of the data from M365 and Azure. So that's why this dashboard's not particularly populated, but it was done within 7 minutes, so it was pretty quick to get started with it. The dashboards combine multiple kinds of visualization, so including graphs and maps, and we've got a map of the attack in 2 slides time. So you can see kind of trends across events and cases. You can see anomalies that are detected by the built-in AI capabilities within Sentinel as well. And there's over 100 built-in rules. So these have been developed by Microsoft and community security experts. You can edit them yourselves, or there's a wizard that helps you create your own analytics rules using KQL queries. I'm sure quite a lot of you out there won't know how to write KQL, because I think it's quite it's an interesting language, is how I've heard some developers refer to it. But yes, so the queries are written in KQLs, and then these rules can create alerts, and then incidents can be used to trigger automated playbooks, which kind of orchestrate that response to the alerts. They'll do some of the automated incident response as well. And like I said, we've got an investigation map, so we can visualize an incident. So we can investigate alerts and incidents by deep diving into the logs. We can run built-in hunting queries developed by Microsoft, or we can use this investigation map to understand the scope and identify the root cause of a security threat. So the more things that are on this map, I guess the worse it is, because it's affected more things. But if you can click into each of the individual nodes, and you can kind of see detailed information and get some deep insights into the related entities, so like the users and the domains, etc., that have been affected. So just let's have a quick chat around the benefits of using Azure Sentinel, and then I'll hand over to Ed. So with the lockdown having a major effect on the UK economy, having a cost-effective solution is key right now. Like we said, Azure Sentinel is cloud native, so there's no infrastructure cost, there's no upfront fees for servers and software. So on top of this, you can bring your Office 365 data for free. So the more security products you're using from the Microsoft stack, the more free data you can ingest into the solution. So the benefits of using integrated technologies like Azure AD, Microsoft Information Protection, the ATP suite, it's all compounded when we can start looking at this data in our SIEM solution. You can also bring your Azure activity logs and Office 365 logs as well, so you can get a pretty holistic view of your environment for fairly low cost. We do often get asked as well about how organisations can predict the monthly billing so they can budget accordingly. So using Azure reserved instances, it's exactly the same as it's just for as if you've just got VMs in the cloud. You can have a reserved instance for Sentinel as well, which lets you take out a set amount of storage each month on a fixed contract term, and in return for that you can get up to, I think it's 60%-ish savings. But on the flip side, if you don't want to commit to that annual investment, then you can use the pay-as-you-go model. So that gives you the flexibility to scale up and down throughout the year and bring in additional workloads or remove them as you guys see fit. Secondly, Sentinel easily connects to sources across our hybrid IT environment. So we don't want to spend loads of excessive time, money, effort integrating systems integrating technologies into our SIEM solution. And like we said, with a lot of people already using M365, we can use the pre-built connectors to bring those Microsoft solutions in. But again, I know that not everyone does run exclusively on Microsoft technologies. So Microsoft does have an extensive partner ecosystem. So they've had the foresight to create native connectors and dashboards for popular solutions like Palo Alto, Symantec, Fortinet, Cisco. There's a big long list of additional solutions you can bring in quickly and easily as well. And again, the Graph API integration. With the Graph API integration, you can import your own threat intelligence data as well. So you've got the flexibility to kind of customize Sentinel to suit your organization's requirements. I think this is probably quite a big one, and it's probably one that you see a lot as well, Ada, the SOC, the fact that Sentinel can help reduce that alert fatigue. So by bringing, by looking at, it looks at all these events, obviously, but we can, using the machine learning engine, we can really hone where the real incidents are. Is that you find that useful in?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of correlation engines will do this to a degree, right? That's why SIEM exists, but actually we found Sentinel to be very efficient at it. So the actual amount of work that ends up in front of the analysts is smaller, which means you get the actual problems addressed much more quickly. It works well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, if we look at the left-hand side, if we look at the left-hand side, we've got the ingestion of the raw data from the cloud services. So that's from Office 365 and Azure. That produces the anomalous signals, so using security products like ATP. And then from there, we can pull out what are potentially suspicious candidates. So it might be things like anomalous credential use or a new admin's been added into SharePoint. Then we reduce this down further by adding additional rounds of machine learning analysis, which then helps us to see what cases we actually need to investigate. So that's where the SecOps team can then really focus, and we can integrate the tool with tools like ServiceNow, so you can then prioritize and assign your security incidents to people within your organization, or obviously if you've outsourced that SOC, then the SOC can do that, but we can, like I said, prioritize and assign those incidents, and that really helps to improve the efficiency and the efficacy of that incident response as well, because we want to ensure that when we get breached, not if we get breached, that's the saying in it, we don't we're not going to pretend that we're 100% effective with anything. When we get breached, we know that we can remediate that as quickly as possible. And then finally, using the Microsoft Graph and AI-based investigation, we know that Sentinel reduces the time it takes to understand the full scope of an attack and its impact. So with the visual map, we can see the full extent of that attack, and we can take quick actions to remediate or mitigate any of those actions. There's pre-built Azure notebooks and the custom hunting queries, so you can automate those threat hunting capabilities, and they also give you the ability to proactively protect your staff. And as more data is fed into the solution, Microsoft developing more notebooks and queries, meaning that you're on a path of continuous improvement as soon as you start using your Sentinel environment. It is Microsoft pumping $1 billion every year into research and development around the security tooling. So it's definitely an upwards path from here. And now I'm going to hand over to Aid so he can tell you more around ITC Secure and what these guys do.
Thank you very much. Are you moving the slides for me, Amy?
I am. I will.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So the first question, this is really interesting because as a managed services provider, so we provide SOC services, MDR services, and managed Sentinel, managed SIEM. One of the questions that we had to ask ourselves when we started working with Sentinel, with the Microsoft security stack, is this is a much friendlier set of tools than anything really we've seen in the market before, and it's been developed at massive cost by Microsoft to appeal to the end user, to give really useful information to the people who are consuming their services. So if the complexity and the barriers to enabling these services are reduced, then what is the role not just of us, but what is the role of managed security service providers in this new world? And it's really cathartic for us. Actually, it's really useful to look at that, because for two reasons. One, it makes us clearly go back, look at our message, redefine what it is we do that we believe is value add to the customers, regardless of whether the customer has, internal security or the ability to consume the information that Sentinel and other security tools are giving them. But also, I think importantly, from our point of view and from the customer's point of view, for the first time, we're able to totally separate the costs of what we do from that of the infrastructure. So the way we and companies do it differently, but the way ITC delivers Sentinel MDR or managed SOC services is the Microsoft bill remains the customer's. The customer is going to have a relationship with Microsoft, a preferred supplier, Microsoft supplier. They will already have, in most cases, an M365 bill, an Office 365 bill, and this, we don't get involved in that. We say we advise on the configuration. We'll help configure, turn on Sentinel, ingest all the sources. We'll do all that for and with the customer, but we won't sell any Microsoft licenses. We don't sell the additional storage used in the analytics layer. We don't get involved in that. So unlike selling a managed service based on any of the previous SIEMs that we deal with, and we still deal with other SIEMs, we're a big ArcSight partner, and we will remain so. It's horses for courses. We don't sell those licenses, so we have nothing to do with the supporting infrastructure. And so that means when we quote a customer, what we're quoting for is just the things that we do, the things that our skill offering, if you like, our value add. So I think it's much easier for the customer to see what they're getting and to see if they are getting it from us, and it's much easier for us to say, look, we place this value on what it is that we're doing for you, and it's clear, it's very clear cut. So yes, does Sentinel SOC even need a managed service? Well, we believe it does. We believe we still have a lot of value to bring. There's a very basic point there. 24/7 is still a challenge for a lot of organizations. If you are going to be running a project to acquire, to ingest, to process, and to present security data from via Sentinel or from any tool, there's very little point in not watching it 24/7, right? Not having somebody physically sitting in front of a screen processing alerts and deciding whether to take action or to do further analysis on a 24-hour basis. And that, it's a very basic thing, but it's still an issue which it affects a lot of our customers. It's still a reason that drives a lot of customers to come and talk to a managed services provider, because obviously we've invested in teams who work around the clock, who have these skills, and are still more cost effective than hiring them yourself and setting up a team. So it's basic, but it still remains true. Further to that, there are some great automatic responses built into Sentinel. There's some great, we saw the graph that showed the reduction of billions of bits of data down to just a dozen or so actionable pieces of intelligence, and that works really well. And also in the wider Microsoft environment, you can take automatic action through things like Defender ATP to detect and mitigate threats, in seconds, a lot more quickly than an analyst could process it and decide to take action. But ultimately, it's still not going to give you a completely secure environment. Ultimately, you still need people involved in the mix to check that automation is doing what it's supposed to be doing, to tune that automation, to automate more things as appropriate. We automate as much as we possibly can, dependent on risk profile. But there are some things that you never want to automate, and you always want somebody. It's either attached to very significant data or assets, and you always want to know about that, or it's of significant severity, and you always want to know about that. You don't want just an automated reaction to happen. And so we provide that content creation and data curation. So you can, from a content curation point of view, what I'm talking about is playbooks, use cases, that the setting up of those automated responses, how you handle the data, what you do with it when you get it, the generation of what another interesting angle here is. This is the generation of intellectual property, the tuning of the tools to reflect your environment more precisely than it does out of the box, to reduce those false positives even further, to make it a usable environment for the most usable it can be for your specific business. But that intellectual property, once you've done that, remains the customers in this environment. Now, previously, that wouldn't be the case. You know, for most MSSPs, including ourselves, if we were providing licensing, a SIEM environment and a platform, developing the content for it, typically, you know, if you decide you don't want to operate that SOC with us anymore, all that work that's been done, all that fine tuning, all that automatic, all that KQL scripting, all that automation that's been done, goes with the contract, disappears when you leave. In this environment, because the infrastructure is yours, anything we do stays with you. And so you can simply pick that up and take it to another services provider. It's a real clean separation of roles and responsibilities. And data curation, I prefer to call it curation because it really is curation these days. You know, you get, the tools are very good at sorting out when you have ingested multiple times the same event from different sources. They're pretty good at it, but still, the old adage that if you put garbage in, you get garbage out applies. So, you know, one of the things we do at implementation and then constantly throughout the life of a service contract with a customer is we make sure that what we're taking in is the data which is needed to offer the best visibility and the best level of protection for the customer. We don't just ingest everything, tempting that may be to do that. You know, there's a balance between costs, risks, and actionable security, and we establish that for the customer. And then, of course, threat hunting. So the platform allows us to go and look for risks in the environment, particularly if it's coupled with other Microsoft tools, other third-party tools. In this case, something maybe like Defender ATP. We can use the indicators of compromise that we see from SIEM to go and to inform our analysts to go and look for evidence of breach or attack elsewhere in the environment 24/7. You know, we have the people, that's what they do. Real-time protection goes without saying. We're there to detect and respond. I've talked about the proof of value, and I think if you have to prove to a board that the investment you're asking them to make in an internal SOC or internal security tools, actually proving that you are preventing something happening is very hard to do. Whereas if you have an external services provider with a clearly defined set of roles and responsibilities, can demonstrate to you what they're doing on an hourly, daily basis through, you know, very detailed reporting and interactions and portals, etc. It's much easier to say, look, we need to make this investment, or it's easier to justify making that investment. It helps separate the proof of value from the cost of the infrastructure. And it's controlled investment. You know, we agree a price for a period of time, and you're not left with you know, potentially spiraling runaway costs that you might be if you were attempting to do this internally. Thanks, Amy. That's the next one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like you get your reserved instance of Azure Sentinel, and you've got your reserved costs from you guys as well. So it is quite it's easy to kind of make that budget for it. And like you said, again, with the 24/7 challenge, I was speaking to a customer earlier, and and then we were talking around like when they're not in the office, no one's watching that solution. And if you think about when you're not in the office, it's like 80% of the time because you're only there for 8 hours a day, right? So over the weekend or whatever, there's no one actually sat there doing anything. So I think that's where a big value add from you guys as well.
I remember those days being in the office.
I would love to go back to the office. It'd be great.
So finally, and I'll rattle through this one because I'm aware I took quite a long time over that one. Apologies, Amy. So I talked about, we have a London-based SOC where it normally is at the moment. It's based in dozens of different places, as you can imagine, as we've all moved remote. We have the people. We've invested in the people. They are, highly accredited, highly qualified guys and girls. We have done the integration. Amy talked about integration. We have performed integration with lots and lots of different systems, threat feeds, CRMs, lots and lots of different tools. Our guys, we have developers on team who help us to do these things, and the chances are if you want to integrate something, we've probably already done it and can turn it on easily for you and manage that for you. And as with all managed service providers, the point of using somebody like that, I guess, is using somebody like us is we've made the investment so that you don't have to make that similar investment. Our business exists because we've made the investment in the tools and the people and the training, and we can sell parts of that to lots of different people. We obviously establish and maintain vendor relationships, industry peer relationships, community forums, all the industries that we've, all the sectors and verticals that we deal with, and the events we run. That's all good knowledge, which eventually filters down to informs our services, the way we take products to market, and also gives us lots of insight into how lots of companies in lots of different positions of all sizes are dealing with the problem of reduction of cyber risk, and all that helps us to give each of our customers, I think, a more rounded view and a better service than they would get if they were attempting to do it alone. And reports, the kind of the big chunky output that everyone wants to see from SIEM, that's fine. There's a lot of it. There's a lot available, but I think one of our challenges is to make those reports meaningful, and to make sure that you have established trends over time, so we can see that the things that we're doing, the things that you're doing, are increasing your security, reducing your risk day on day, month on month, year on year. And we are good at developing reports in order to help show that. So that, hopefully I've gone some way to justify our existence in this world where you can set up a SIEM in 7 minutes live on a call. But that's me, Amy. So thank you very much for your time.
No, that's fine. I thought that was really, really great. Yeah, I mean, the fact that you can set up the SIEM in 7 minutes and bring in some of that data doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're doing once you see that data. So
it just means we've got to work harder for our money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's well, and then I think it just shows how good the Sentinel tool is as well. The fact that it is easily configurable, but just because the tool's easily configurable, it doesn't mean that the data that we're dealing with and the threats that we're dealing with are any simpler to kind of prevent as well. So obviously that's where all of your great analysts come in to do some of that proactive remediation activities and kind of proactive threat hunting capabilities as well. So I think that's pretty much it from the talking perspective. So we just want to give you a bit of an idea of kind of the next steps that you could take if you wanted to move forward with us. So ITC Secure are providing 30-day free trials for some clients to assess their SOC as a service needs. So if you're interested about one of those, feel free to get in touch. Identity experts are offering Sentinel proof of concept engagements. Some of those could be fully funded, or some could be paid. We'll talk about it on a case by case basis. But that's where we'll sort of install the solution for you. We'll do a bit of remote monitoring, give you some recommendations on the setup, and you can kind of get an idea of what the spend might look like as well. And if you're just interested in learning a bit more about Sentinel, you might want a bit of a deep dive, have a chat with one of our techies, then feel free to get in touch, and we can provide a bit more information about what Sentinel can do for you. I'm not sure whether there's been any questions in the Q&A box. I can't see it because I'm presenting. So can you see it, Ed? Oh.
No.
No.
Can't. No.
Okay, let me just check. No, okay. Doesn't look like we've had any questions, but if anyone does want to send some through, then feel free. My email address was on the last slide. It's amy.s@identityexperts.co.uk. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for your time, everyone.